Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name is James.
It's an international break, and so it's not going to revolve around Fantasy Premier League today, James.
No, it certainly is not.
We have planned this for a while, or been asked to do this for a while, teased it in a couple of people's polls where it didn't ultimately end up ever winning the vote in people's polls. But with recent events, racism football has reared its head again. I mean, it raises it pretty regularly. And we've talked about doing a special show talking about it. And here we finally are.
Yeah, we are. I feel really strongly in terms of my views, in terms of us covering it. I know a lot of people will be like, you're a Fantasy Premier League podcast, why are you covering this? But I feel strongly that particularly now during the international break, there's no reason with us putting out 6 podcasts in a week while we can't spend a little bit of time talking about this.
I don't think either of us are approaching it very much from the point of view of we never played football at a high enough standard to understand if there is institutional racism within like top tier football, and neither of us have particularly experienced the worst end of it in stadia. Like, I've never been involved in the middle of any monkey chants or bananas or any of that kind of stuff. Yet at the same time, we do regularly go to football, follow football, and the wider things involved with football. So I suppose it's a fan's perspective, and it would be nice to kind of sort of see if there are any solutions to the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly want to try and explore what solutions are, because obviously this subject's been covered quite widely, but by a lot of people. The one thing that's never been covered is in terms of if you take the solution or the example rather of what happened in Bulgaria. Everybody says, oh, more needs to be done, but I don't actually hear anybody coming up with what the answer is to that and what it should be.
Because it's not an easy problem to solve. I think that's part of the situation. It was fascinating yesterday, right? So I think we need to differentiate between the two sides of racism in football. You've got the institutional racism of like players not getting the opportunity and that kind of thing, and then you got the fan base stuff, which is hooliganism and football rolled into one. That seems to rear its head a lot more now than the kind of club related stuff. I mean, so many black players are making it through. There's not a lot of Asian players making it through necessarily, but I mean, it's not, I suppose it's just not big in the culture really, more than anything else. And then the fan side of things is completely different. Fascinating conversation yesterday, right, with Manchild sitting in the studio, in the office. And we start talking about the fact that we're going to do a show on racism in football. He doesn't know anything about football at all.
He knows a lot about racism, does he?
Nah, he doesn't. But he doesn't watch a lot of games, and he doesn't really keep in touch with the news or anything. So like the stuff that's going on in Bulgaria, for example, what happened in the Bulgaria-England game, he's completely confused
Clueless.
by. So imagine someone flying into the scene who is culturally quite aware of society, but not really about football. And then I showed him a number of clips from the last 3 to 6 months. the Raheem Sterling incident at Chelsea, and a couple of others similar. And he's like, it's the state of confusion in him that is this happening in football? I'm like, yes, mate, it's happening in football. What, this year? I'm like, yes, this year. He's like, how? And then he asked me a very interesting telling question. Then he goes to me, what about gay people in football? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, do they get abuse as well? I was just thinking,
that's a different podcast.
The reality is there are no openly gay footballers. There might be 1 or 2 professional openly gay footballers. I didn't do any research into it, but I know for a fact there's
Well,
none.
I think that's a subject that we'll certainly come back to. There was the guy who come out on we didn't come out in the end on Twitter, at Gay Footballer. And we all kind of fought and hoped. People rallied behind it in August, hoping that he was going to reveal who he was, supposedly quite a young championship footballer. And he backed out of it and closed the account, didn't he?
Yeah, it just goes to show that a normal member of everyday society who doesn't know anything about football would just make the assumption that there wouldn't be racism and that homophobia wouldn't exist, and it would be fine for a player to be gay, for example. Yet these levels of discrimination still exist. There are watching some videos on YouTube when we were doing research and reading articles and stuff is quite depressing in the sense that you see some very young 20, 21, 22-year-olds walking off the pitch in tears. You can tell that this stuff, if we're focused specifically on fan-related racism, affects them horribly. Like, it's distressing to watch how upset it actually makes certain players when the fans behave in that way. And when you do kind of see these instances, you actually think that there's a real human element to this.
Do you think the fact that we both go to football games regularly in London, which is obviously a very multicultural city, means that we're perhaps a little bit blinded to some of the perceptions of things?
Yeah.
And
that's not coming from experience. That's coming from hearsay. So Gary Neville there was a video, Sky Sports Monday Night Football with Carragher and Neville after the Raheem Sterling incident at Chelsea. And Gary Neville said, look, he was talking about it and he said, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Lancashire. Racist language was normal.
Yep.
So if you're talking about outside of London and we're talking about 25 years ago, using racist language was normal. Yeah, we are sheltered in London. 100% we're sheltered in London because it's a much more multicultural place. But it's really interesting to see the types of reactions that you get from people, so many of which are unhelpful to the situation. So there's videos on YouTube showcasing racist incidents where people are going all in on other players or fans, calling them dickheads or scum or whatever. You're like, yeah, sure, they're racist and they're wrong, but that's not really helping the situation. People saying just walk off the pitch. You're actually giving the racist fans what they want, and that kind of thing. So people going back to it's an education problem. Again, I think there's so many flaws in that argument that there is no right or wrong, and it's way more complex than some of the conversations that have been had are about.
Go on, go on to that a little more in terms of the educational point of view, because I feel quite strongly that is something that can be helped. And I feel like from my experience of going to football, I've never heard black this or that ever said in a football ground. I know, and we've seen, for example, the incident with Sterling at Chelsea last year, that in a very isolated incident, people in their aggressive nature, whether they are or are not racist, in their aggressive moment, resort to the worst kind of abuse, right?
It's when you're under...
But I feel like I've noticed that football fans, and maybe it's just me, like I said, I've been a bit sheltered in London, here are a lot better educated than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, etc. Because some of the stuff that I used to hear sung, for example, by Spurs fans, particularly away games, and it's not just Spurs fans, just that's where I've been at away games, right? Is like some of the stuff I would have heard sung 10 years ago, I wouldn't hear sung now.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be accepted. Whereas that's what I'm saying is, like you're talking about what Neville said the culture was back in Lancashire 30, 40 years ago. There was an acceptance, and I'm not saying it was necessarily racist. Perhaps some of the things that they would have sung about, say, Arsene Wenger, for example, they wouldn't, I don't think they'd sing now. Like they haven't come up with a chant for Unai Emery.
Okay, so when we talk about education of people, what we're saying is that if I educate you about racism, you will stop doing it. That's taking the assumption that they don't know that they're doing wrong right now.
I think either they don't know or they don't understand like the implications of what it might mean to player X or group of people Y. But the flip side of that is I think some people you've seen like with some of the, kind of like the Nazi saluting from some of these Bulgarian fans holding up T-shirts to like the opposite, to say no to racism.
Yeah.
Like say yes to racism or whatever. That obviously they are out to be impactful and hurtful. They don't give a fuck.
And that's is the difference. Majority of racist incidents come from that minority. It's that very small hardcore minority that create the bulk of the problems, right? I think that from my point of view, if someone says to me, educate them and they will know better, I think they know better. I think that they know that being racist, monkey chanting, throwing bananas, all the rest of it is wrong. They have an agenda and they don't give a shit what they'll do to get that agenda across. That's why I think things like walking off the pitch, I don't think it affects them. I think that shutting down games or having games behind closed doors, it doesn't affect them. I don't think there are consequences that matter to those guys.
So why do you think that group of 50 to 100 or however many it was at the Bulgaria game decided to leave just before halftime?
Why? I think they knew, or why did they? I think they'd made their point, and that was it. Before it got too heated and they got arrested, they got out of there.
Because we were live streaming that night during the game, we had the sound on very quietly, so as not to kind of override what we were discussing during our stream. So I don't think at the time you and I quite realised the seriousness of what was going on.
Yeah, I don't think we did
at the time.
I don't like to work off the assumption with racism that people don't know that making monkey chants, throwing bananas, calling someone any term under the sun is wrong. I think they already know it. And so some of the punishments and consequences that are being talked about, I don't think matter to them. So it's about finding consequence that matters to them. Now, that's very hard.
I think in that particular incident, so much was made of that there might be an issue that those people turned up to make sure that there was an issue. I think you're right.
Yeah, they're there to cause trouble, right? There's a few fundamental things in human nature that I've always thought are deeper rooted that we need to think about. Like, obviously, I really believe that as a species, we're quite tribal. We used to be tribal when it was like villages fighting villages. And we've always grown up with wars with countries between countries and whatever. We are tribal, and now we live in a much more peaceful society. We've got to have something to stick together about and also not like other people about. And football has risen up as one of the real reasons to be tribal. So that's in our innate nature. I think we're fearful of things that are not the same as us. So if someone looks differently or supports a different club or whatever, it gives a them and us kind of a spin on things. And then I think we're always looking for a scapegoat or an excuse. And it's easier to blame other people than it is to blame our own, right? So mix that tribalism with fear of other people and then looking for someone else to blame. It makes it easy to target other people.
So, I mean, this is kind of a little bit before our time, but there's a famous picture that you can search on the internet, which was taken at Goodison Park. Mm-hmm. It was either late 80s or very early 90s, where John Barnes is backheeling a banana off a football pitch. Now, the first time racism, even as a concept, had dawned on me was watching John Barnes play for England against San Marino in 1993, not the famous 7-1 away game where we conceded after 9 seconds or what it was. A game at Wembley, which England won 6-0, where he was performing badly and he was being targeted. There was the famous documentary that a lot of the older listeners will remember about Graham Taylor, Do I Not Like That? And there's footage on that documentary where Graham Taylor's turning around to a supporter during that game, telling someone basically not to F off, but saying like, excuse me, he's like one of us, because John Barnes is getting pelted by his own fans with racist abuse. Now, I think that at that time stemmed from a little bit like what you're saying there was, although he was one of us, there was a thought that John Barnes, for example, wasn't born in England. He was of different origin. He had a different look to other people. And therefore, in a circumstance where things weren't going well for him, he was the easy scapegoat. Mm-hmm. That was targeted racism. Now, that wouldn't happen from England fans now.
No.
But is that what you're kind of trying to imply there, that face doesn't fit as such? Or is that the right term?
We look for someone to blame and someone to have a go at. And when it comes to football, mob mentality, people will do things in a group that they'll never do as an individual. And so they can hide behind that. And I think we do. That's the thing. So I'm interested in like the bigger picture of, all right, you can hate me because I'm brown, or you can hate me because I'm a West Ham fan. What's the difference? Because both are just encouraging hatred of someone else because they're different in some way. What's the difference? Like, as a Spurs fan, you could not like me because I'm brown, or you could not like me as a West Ham fan. What's the difference?
But surely to you, there must be a difference in that. It's easy for me to sit here as the white guy, and go, hate me for being white or hate me for being a Spurs fan. Surely emotionally in you must feel a little bit different about that. In terms of, I don't know if you've ever had targeted racism in that way.
Not
You've
really.
spoken before and said you've never had any impact at a football match, particularly.
Never at a ground, never at a game. Only odd bits and pieces. I actually experienced quite a bit in Russia when I lived there, but that was 2001, 2. So we're talking 17, 18 years ago, and it's still pretty bad in Eastern Europe, right? You can see. But I think the whole concept of not liking other people or targeting other people because they're different, whether it be because of the club they support or the colour of their skin or whatever their hair is or whatever. I just think that not liking other people because they're different is a bad start point. And that's why I'm not very anti. I don't really care what teams, other club people support. I'm not going to hate people because they support Spurs or Chelsea or whatever. Just whatever. Support your team and crack on with your life.
I hate Arsenal. I wouldn't differentiate between a white Arsenal fan and a black Arsenal fan.
No, you hate them both equally.
Exactly.
Right? But why hate them in the first place anyway?
Because they're the rival. And you're talking about tribalism in football.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to hate the enemy. What do you want me to do? Like them?
Ignore them? I'm not sure.
I generally do ignore them, mate.
Yeah.
They talk a lot of rubbish, so I do. But no, there's a massive difference there, mate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the messaging of education, though, I'm just thinking, why don't hate other people because they're different. So hate is a very interesting thing. You wouldn't discriminate against someone because they're an Arsenal fan, maybe.
No, I mean, I don't walk around thinking, like, if an Arsenal fan passes me by...
You're not going to start a fight.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So,
I mean, obviously not. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything. No, of course not.
And if we're playing another team and they're losing and I'm sitting next to a fan of the other team, you'll laugh and joke with them or give them grief and vice versa. Banter.
That said, if I'm outside the ground on a match day and someone walks down the street in an Arsenal shirt, like, he's going to get a lot of fucking dirty looks.
Yeah. Which is interesting, but bringing it back to kind of, I'm just curious as to what level of differentiation and that is banter, and when does it descend into unacceptable levels. And I think just tribalism, so I don't think education is really where it's at. I mean, you can educate people and say, do you understand the impact of your actions? But I feel like a lot of these hardcore do.
So how do you deal with it?
I don't think walking off the pitch is the answer. I think what UEFA are trying with this 3-strike, it worked in Bulgaria to a certain degree. I don't know, I haven't seen it work since. How do you deal with it? You also don't want to go down this sanitizing, gentrifying football so that it's just like one of these,
I think
prawn sandwich.
The 3-strike protocol is a start, but it's a Mickey Mouse start. One of the things you probably keep hearing online is like, would I accept racism twice before I could finally respond the third time, if in a work environment or on the street or something? No, you wouldn't, right? So why should it be accepted in a football stadium? There is a huge difference between abuse and targeted abuse. I don't know if that stretches to. I spoke about this.
What do you mean by that? Abuse and targeted abuse?
So, like, I don't think, with the way football is, I don't think we ever want to get to a position that, like, you can't boo people or you can't, like, target people to try and put them off their game. But there are levels of acceptance, right? It's not acceptable. I've heard people say some players get booed because they're black. Now, I think, like, overseas, if you think of the England game in Spain, which I think was around 2004, where there was audible booing and monkey chanting against, I think it was Ashley Cole and Sean Wright Phillips.
Yep.
Like, that's not on. But like Cristiano Ronaldo got to a stage where he got booed every time he touched the ball in this country because he was so fucking good, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't because he was Portuguese.
No.
It was because he was so good.
Yeah.
So there's a level of distinguished difference there for me. And the monkey chanting is not acceptable at any time or any place. What we saw, the incident, the weekend, some might have seen in Ukraine with Tyson, which I tell you, you've seen that, have you? So Tyson of Shakhtar Donetsk, technically it was a home game against Dynamo Kiev, but I think they're playing in Kharkiv at the moment because of the crises in Donetsk. And Tyson was going through, challenged with a Dynamo Kiev player. Referee gave a free kick to Dynamo Kiev. And he's obviously been targeted and he's going towards the Dynamo Kiev players, fans at the time. And he gives them the bird, he gives them the middle finger and hoofs the ball up towards them and gets sent off.
Yep. He's not the first to do it, right? I think Boateng's done it. There's a few people that have done it.
There's been a number of instances, obviously, in Italy.
Yeah.
And Spain has got definitely issues as well. I spoke about that game with England in 2000. I think it was 2004. Was in the Bernabeu. But it's interesting that because I can't recall whether really hearing those things when Real Madrid have played.
No.
So I don't know.
Club football is clearly worse in Italy. So I spoke to when I was chatting to Manchild about it, and he was like, he said that you should just go zero tolerance. I go, okay, what does that mean? He goes, any incident of racism, you just kick the club out of the competition and shut that shit down. I was like, all right, so if a group of 10 fans go on the terrace and be racist and they're caught being racist, you would kick the club out of all of these competitions. He goes, yeah, zero tolerance. I was like, all right, we work in a company where there's 25, 30 people here. One person says something racist, do we just shut the organization down and the other 24 people have to go and find another job? Like, because that's the example that you're giving us here is go to the ultimate extreme, just shut that shit down.
Well, no, that one person gets sacked, don't they?
Yeah, but the club getting chucked out of a competition is not one person getting sacked. One person getting sacked is that person being ejected from the stadium and being given a lifetime ban, in my opinion.
So there was an incident locally to us very recently at Haringey Borough.
Oh, yeah.
Where the game did get abandoned.
Yeah, it was Yeovil, right?
At Haringey Borough. Now, the incident happened where the Haringey Borough goalkeeper, who was black, was getting serious and vile abuse. And the Haringey Borough manager decided to take the team off the pitch. And afterwards, the Yeovil team stood with the Haringey Borough players on the pitch, kind of a show of unity between the 22 players and squads between them all. Yeovil were not thrown out of the competition. The game was replayed. Yeovil won the rearranged game. The fans at question, this was 2 people apparently. 2 people. I agree with you that I don't think that Yeovil could have been thrown out of the FA Cup because of the actions of 2 people. That's one of the issues with trying to manage and make a decision on this, because the players, officials, supporters of Yeovil Town Football Club, who have got, to my knowledge, no history of that. A respectable club who came from non-league up all the way up to the championship and have now gone back to non-league. There's no history of them with these kind of incidents, to my knowledge.
Yep.
Why should they lose out because of 2 fucking minority dickheads?
Yep.
So the right thing happened there. I don't know what the actual punishment was to those 2 individuals in question, but presumably they were pulled up.
They're going to get lifetime bans, and I think the police would then get involved.
How do you give someone a lifetime ban who goes to non-league football?
Yeah. It's very hard, right? There's no CCTV, ticketing, stewards.
Well, it's not even just that, is it? I mean, like Premier League grounds, etc. You know, it's probably stewarding of probably a higher class level, whereas say non-league grounds and lower league, League 1, League 2, that kind of thing, all the stewarding would be local, right? Part-time work. They want to get involved in that shit and stop someone gaining entry to a football. They can't be bothered, mate.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort. I can understand, or a lot of risk to reward there when you've got fans that can be like that. But the answer is not to punish the majority for the actions of the minority.
That said, the case of Bulgaria, now they were already under partial stadium closure, which hold on a minute. The ground was nowhere near full anyway against England.
No.
The partial ground closure was 5,000 out of 46,000 seats. Presumably, the area where they were all chanting the previous time, they just went and stood somewhere different. So they've now got they got a fine. And I sent you an article at the time, which was done by Brian Swanson, who works for Sky, who said that the impact of Bulgaria having a stadium closure might be as much as, just one game might be as much as 10% of that football association's revenue over a year. And so actually taking away the fine, which the fines were always Mickey Mouse, right? Like the fine that Bulgaria got was still less than what Nicholas Bentner got fined for fucking wearing Paddy Power shorts. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that actually, the closing of the stadium would have a massive impact on them.
I don't know if I agree.
But that's changed.
10%.
That's changed because they're letting kids in the stadium now.
Into where? The Bulgaria stadium?
Yep. They're inviting kids in. Apparently, this is a new thing that UEFA has legislated where
under 16s
school kids, etc., can get invited in and they can still make money through concessions, etc., etc.
Right. So
and people still get tickets, you know that, don't you?
I didn't know that.
How easy will it be to get tickets?
I have no idea.
So you ain't going to let 40,000 14-year-olds in a football stadium with no parental guidance, right?
No, of course not.
So people are still going to get in the stadiums, aren't they?
Yeah.
Again, who's going to manage that?
I think, was it 75,000 euros that turned out to be 60,000 pounds for Bulgaria? And 2 days ago, or was it even yesterday perhaps, Bernardo Silva got his fine for the tweet that he put out against Ben Mendy, which I actually genuinely believe that he wasn't being racist. He was just being ignorant and a bit stupid. But that was 50 grand. So you're telling me there's 10 grand difference between an individual putting out a stupid tweet about his mate versus the crazy 40 or 50 people in the terrorist making monkey chants and racist chants and all the rest of it. Doesn't seem a fair system of fines, in my opinion.
But what would have been the greater impact to Bernardo Silva? Rather than the money.
Missing games.
Exactly.
Missing games. From an individual point of view, yeah. And was it a one-match ban or suspended one-match ban alongside the 50,000? And he's got to go
So he'll miss the Chelsea game.
Yeah.
That's
one game. And then he's got to go on an educational workshop or what have you.
I don't believe, like, we obviously don't know, but all the reports are that Bernardo Silva and Mendy get on really well.
Yeah,
like,
they're really good friends. That's the thing.
And I think he made the sort of comment which, once you're very close to each other, like me and Suj might joke about something off camera about, my skin or your skin. It's not racist or anything. No. It's who we are. But you don't put that sort of shit out in the world arena. For people to see. It's ridiculous. No. Keep it fucking private. He's just been a complete idiot there. And the graphic he used obviously depicts a black character.
Yeah, chocolate bar mascot. Or something.
Yeah, it wasn't on.
No.
We actually saw that tweet live while we were recording. I didn't know who this character was or anything. Yeah. And I saw it and that's not clever.
It's not at all.
So he's just not well advised, unfortunately.
No.
But what would have hurt him was the games ban. 50 grand, yeah. Fucking tell your agent, pay him that.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Bang the agent a bit more money to go and actually pay the money as well. Agent's happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The only way you're gonna hurt these people is by taking what they're there for in the first place. For me, is the football. Now it's a balancing act between what I said about like Yeovil wouldn't have deserved to be kicked out the FA Cup, or because of one dickhead at Stamford Bridge last year, Chelsea wouldn't have deserved to have points deducted, for example, because one prick has said the wrong thing to Raheem Sterling. That's not a reflection of the other 40,000 people that were there that day, or however many people there are supporting Chelsea around the world shouldn't get impacted by that. With a country like Bulgaria, they were already on several warnings.
Correct.
Now, one of the arguments was throw them out of Euros. Right, I ain't fucking qualifying anyway, so I don't know what that's going to do.
Yep.
My solution would be, right, you're already out of World Cup qualifying. You don't even enter the next competition.
Yeah, again,
you've already had severe warnings, mate.
Yeah, so that's like a third tier punishment, right? Level 1, you met 1 match ban. Level 2, 4 match ban. Level 3 would be out of the next tournament. So if you had tiered punishments like that were that were rolling over a period of 10 to 15 years, then I could understand it. If you look at Italy and maybe England a little bit more in club football, fans not being able to watch their team will have way more impact than the likes of international football with Bulgaria, because there the quality of the football is so poor that people aren't really going to support their team. Whereas in Italy and that kind of thing, the ultras and what have you, it's their gang lifestyle there. If you take that away, they'll find another way to get in or cause trouble, but maybe outside the ground or what have you.
So I would take it a step further than just saying you can't enter World Cup qualifying. I'd take all their clubs out of European competition as well. Now,
how does that impact the fan who's being racist? This is where I'm struggling to make the consequence match the action. So they don't care; they'll just find another way to make trouble.
So in the late 80s, ask a Coventry City fan or a Wimbledon fan who their clubs won the FA Cup in the late 80s if they ever seen their side play European football. Wasn't their fault that English, because of English hooliganism, the English fans got banned from Europe for 5 years. Why do we tolerate this when we had to accept that?
Do you think that ban improved hooliganism in English football?
Yeah, I think it probably did, because for a long time, English football fans weren't on the continent. And actually, around the time we were starting to get back in, there was obviously the success of Italia 90 and then the launch of the Premier League.
Which brought with it all-seater stadiums, increase in ticket prices, a change in the demographic of football fans. A slightly more gentrified football fan at this point. You're gonna, you don't want to use money as the barrier to entry to try and get rid of those kind of fans who maybe then can't afford to pay 60, 80 quid a ticket. You don't want to do that. That's not what it's about. Football's there for the people, right? It's the working man's game. So yeah, I understand that. Ultimately, I think the clubs have to take a bit of responsibility as well. I mean, I don't know what you think about the stewards or the stewarding at Tottenham or what have you. Do they take it seriously? Or is anyone scared of stewards?
Well, there's been problems with stewards at the new stadium at Tottenham.
What type of
That's
problems?
a whole different subject. I mean, it's nothing to do with racism. But standing on the home end,
right,
where stewards were being too forceful to start with.
Getting people to sit down.
Yeah. You ain't going to get 17,000 people to sit down on that home end, mate. Good luck with that.
At the home end?
Yeah. Which Spurs advertised as basically a standing stand.
Really?
Yeah.
We don't have any standing areas.
But then people, because they wanted to go on that, that's why I never went on it. I never went on that end because I knew it'd be standing up and I wasn't going to make my mum and dad who are in their mid-60s stand up for a game. So I went on the upper tier on the side.
Yeah. Maybe I haven't seen it, but I've never really noticed in our end a standing section. I don't think there particularly is.
You're too far from the pitch, mate.
Yeah, and it was so telegraphed it was coming. But things like, okay, there's smoking. There's no smoking inside the stadium. In the stairwells, in the toilets, half-time, everyone's smoking.
Oh, away from home, that's a given, mate.
At a home end, right? At the London Stadium, there's people smoking. The stewards don't do nothing. They're standing there. They're not going to do anything about it. And so the responsibility is on the clubs to make sure that something's done. Like I put it this way, at the London Stadium, if someone was chanting something racist, not directly at me or even on the pitch, if I went to a steward and said, yo, that guy's chanting racist stuff, I don't feel like they'd do shit.
There was a video at West Ham. It might have even been from the game in February, or it might have been the year before, about someone shouting obscenities to Salah.
Okay.
Have you seen that before?
I think I do remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Shoe bomber, was it? Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I do remember that when he was taking the corner.
Yeah.
That was was it 2-2 finish?
Do you know if anything happened or consequence?
I have no
of
idea.
That, or?
No idea. But it was not. It's just bad. At that point, and I don't feel like the stewarding is at that level. At the level it needs to be. So the clubs need to take a little bit of responsibility.
There was a fucking dickhead at Spurs, weren't there? Who threw a fucking banana at fucking Aubameyang in December. What are you thinking? He said, I wasn't thinking. Well, you know fucking shit.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, who
not.
takes a banana into a football ground anyway?
Yeah.
The fuck?
That is true. I have a few snacks in my kid's snack bag, but not a banana, mate.
And you just get one idiot like that. See, that's the flip side of it. You get one idiot like that could cost it for me.
Yeah.
30 odd years of never missing a fucking home game, and one dickhead next to me acts like that, and I've got a problem. That's why when people have said to me, if you heard that around you, would you speak up? Do you know what? 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have. I would now, because I know better.
So are we saying that the reality is that when incidents do happen and people do get caught, more needs to be made of it from the clubs?
I really feel now...
Like if you really raise someone as, look, this guy did this and this is the consequence, and if you do it, the same is going to happen to you. I think they need to be named and shamed and hung out to dry publicly way more than potentially they are. Public shaming.
I don't know if public shaming is necessarily the answer.
It will not necessarily have an impact on them in the way that you want, but you wouldn't want to go through that exact same. If someone said to you, you get caught saying something racist,
you'd probably deserve it, but
yeah. So then your face is going to be in the paper, and you're going to be vilified, and people are going to know.
I was reading last night actually about an incident where Dixie Dean, who, and this is going back some. Was an amazing goal scorer for Everton in like the 20s and the 30s.
Yeah.
And he was quite dark skinned, and he took abuse leaving the field, and he actually punched a fan. I never knew this before.
Sure.
And apparently he claimed the fan complained to the policeman. Obviously, we wouldn't have had cameras then in the 20s and the 30s and that. Yeah. So if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. Apparently the policeman saw it and he said, "You fucking deserve that, mate."
Yeah. Interesting.
That'd be better now, wouldn't it?
Well,
we go
mob rule.
Yeah, just let them go all Cantona on it.
Do you think it's getting worse?
I think, again, I'm going back to kind of the London thing. For me, no, it's getting better. But I feel like because the scrutiny's on it and outside of our bubble, it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much more that we're aware of. Say like the incident with Tyson, like 10 years ago, we wouldn't have known about it.
No.
We would never have known that happened. So I don't know if that was happening 10 years ago. And now I think players are beginning to feel that they can start having an impact in response to this. Whereas before, I think it was like, I was reading about Paul Parker, who played for the United winning team in the early 90s, played for England, QPR amongst others. He was a kid at Fulham when he made his debut at Leeds in the 60s. And Leeds actually got a fan group, one of the first fan groups up, which was like a Unite Against Racism kind of fan group. But Paul Parker came on as a 16-year-old and was getting racist abuse at Ellen Road and was told by his manager, you can either come off or you accept it. And that was the attitude in the 80s.
Yep.
It was acceptable. And I think it's only just got to that stage where people can now begin to, because people have begun to stood up for it, people like Sully Muntari, Kevin Prince Boateng. We've obviously seen what happened. We'll talk about this in a sec with Lukaku. A lot. Those incidents I'm describing are all in Italy, but it's brought it to a wider attention where players, Balotelli, of course, as well.
He gets it so bad.
Yeah, where people are now beginning, like, okay, this is not acceptable. I need to stand up and speak for myself. Whereas I think, obviously, particularly black players, never felt before like they could. If there's one positive out of all this, it is that I believe that players are now beginning to feel empowered to say, no, I don't have to put up with this.
I agree with you on that.
That's one positive.
Yeah. I feel like it's getting worse rather than better, but also I can appreciate that we're getting shown more than we ever have been in the past. The one that sticks out for me from last year, again, because nothing happened, but the videos are all on YouTube, was the situation with Millwall and Everton in the FA Cup, where you've got an entire stand chanting racist stuff.
And it shows we've still got problems in this country.
Yeah, massively. But that... I put so much of that down to mob mentality. I reckon, correct me if you disagree with me, but the vast majority of the people in that stand chanting that, if they watch themselves back the day after, would be like, that was fucking stupid. I feel like a lot just go with the flow with the mob mentality.
Millwall is a case scenario where they're kind of, a lot of their supporters are proud of the whole reputation of no one likes us and we don't care we're Millwall from the den, and live up to that. And because they've always lived kind of lower championship, upper League One over recent years, it's kind of been quite well hidden that I think there's still massive problems. You played them in the League Cup a few years ago. I mean, how fucking... I don't know if you went that night.
No way.
Yeah, but that's the point. You wouldn't take your kids to that, would you?
Nah, not a chance.
I mean, I'd take my boy, but... but no, it's always... And I'm not saying it's just Mill. It's not a pick on Mill, but...
No, of course not.
Because they don't have these big games regularly, they marched down to Tottenham giving it the big one a couple of years ago when we played them. They love that centre of attention. I bet the Millwall fans that were involved in that weren't even that bothered. The chant, for those who don't know it, was they were singing they'd rather be a Pakistani than a Scouse.
Yeah. At the Everton away fans, of course.
A little bit more aggression.
It can come across like being a West Ham fan picking on Millwall, but that's a scenario where if you banned the fans from like 5 games, I feel like that would have had an impact. The
impact on Mill would have been they beat Everton.
Yeah.
In that FA Cup tie.
Yeah, but I feel like if the fans in this country that did that day, they could go to 5, 6, 7 games the weeks after and they probably wouldn't chant anything racist. I feel like, whereas in Italy, for example, the ultras and what have you, it's a weekly occurrence. That was a scenario, but anyone who's been to the New Den or whatever, tell me if I'm wrong because I don't watch Championship football.
I don't think I can go now.
Football, nah. But banning fans there because they are fans who go week in, week out to watch the football would have an impact. Banning the ultras in Italy, for example, who just go to cause trouble.
But you say that, so say like that game against Everton, you say those are regular. Are they?
I don't know. I'm making assumptions here.
I bet you, not a big club, mate. I bet you and I could have got a ticket for that.
You reckon? Yeah. It was full.
You only got to be registered for. Listen, I could go and register at Millwall tomorrow as a member, and I probably can't buy a ticket till next season, maybe, or something. I don't know what the restrictions be, but after a certain amount of time's gone, I'm going to buy a ticket. I could go over there. I could be racist if I wanted to, and just be one of them.
Mm. You said we'd talk about Lukaku.
Yeah, well, the Lukaku thing is incredible because of the statement that the Inter Milan ultras put out.
Yeah.
Which I take it you know about this.
Yeah. From the start of the season.
The Inter Milan ultras put out a very long-winded statement, which I could read out, but it's way too fucking embarrassing, to be honest, where they tried to defend the abuse from Calgary supporters, who are also another set of fans who've been warned several times over, that the Calgary fans were not being racist to Lukaku. It was a way to put him off.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the world does that work? The player's running up to take a penalty. You can fucking boo. You can wave your arms like all the rest of us do. You need to make monkey noises as well. No. He scored, by the way.
Interestingly, I don't agree with the Inter fan statement. To a certain degree, I do believe them.
Oh, I believe them. I believe that that's what in their thick heads they think is correct.
They think, you know what? How am I going to put him off? Let me just be racist. I don't think they think, oh, there's a black guy. Let me be racist.
So this is where we come back to educational.
Yeah. So are you saying if we educated people that this is the right way to put players off and this is the wrong way?
No, but like this is the official supporters club of one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Inter Milan is a huge football club, right?
Yeah.
Now, for whatever reason in Italy, there are social problems with, black footballers or quite even often just players who aren't Italian playing in Serie A.
Yeah.
Right. And it's quite widespread generally across the whole league. Remind me of something I want to say about Lazio in a minute. I agree with you. The statement they put out, it wasn't to, they didn't have to defend the Calgary fans. They put the statement out to try and say to Lukaku, it's a little bit like what I said, what Paul Parker got told. Oh, just accept it. This is how it is.
Yeah.
No. This is 2019. And this is still going on. And they believe that their opinion on that, it's acceptable to try and put a footballer off by being racist. That's what they still believe is acceptable.
Yep. Let me to talk about
Wow.
Lazio, and then we'll talk about something a little different.
Yeah, and all I was going to say about Lazio was they were walking through Glasgow 3 weeks ago before a Europa League tie with Celtic. And there's at least a mob of about 100 of them walking through the city centre in Glasgow doing fascist salutes and all that. Lazio have in the last, I think it's the last 18 months, have now been fined 17 times.
For racism. In how long?
I think it's 18 months.
That's once a month, give or take.
Yeah.
By who? UEFA or the Italian Football Federation?
Just combinations of people giving them out like $5,000 fines and shit.
There is a point at which, you think this is stupid. 17 fines in 18 months. It's like you're going to give someone 17
But that's
warnings.
how many warnings? And
that's where your tiered approach to
It
punishments.
happened again in a couple of weeks, and it's the same thing again. That's where people are saying, okay, right, at what point do we... I think we need to distinguish a massive difference between the two dickhead Yeovil fans and the 100-odd Bulgaria fans and the 100-odd Lazio fans, and say, what the fuck is this? Why did those Lazio pricks deserve the right to go to a city like Glasgow and support their team?
Correct.
That's what they're doing. They're going to a major city in another country and sharing their fucking sick beliefs.
Yeah.
No, let's get them out of this shit.
So there's a couple of things in the conversation we're having that have kind of come to light that I think actually are interesting solutions. I think standardizing punishments is really important. I think there should be standardized punishments. So strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, strike 4, getting more and more and more severe as you go along. Because 17 fines at this point is stupid, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if you total up the 17 fines, it might even be less than Bernardo Silva was fined for that one incident. So
not quite. I'm not sure it matches Nicholas Benter's Paddy Power shorts, but
I think standardizing it, you then know what you're in for and what you're going to get at that point. I think having standardized punishments also will allow fans to stand up to each other. That peer-to-peer thing is really important. Making sure that fans feel empowered to stand up against other fans with stronger stewarding is another really interesting solution. But standardizing the punishments really kind of is interesting. There is another element to football. Like everything in football now is so heavily governed by the financial side of the game, right? You've got sponsors coming in, TV rights, etc., etc. Now, take an example of a parallel universe, which is the American political scene right now. You got Trump being Trump, and there's a lot of racism within. There is a lot of racism and xenophobia and white supremacy and a lot of his followers and followership, and that translates into some of the stuff that you see in the news media. So Fox News, for example, there are a lot of controversial people on that have said all sorts of dodgy things over the last couple of years.
well, look at the way every headline surrounding Raheem Sterling for how long?
Yeah.
Every single headline has a racist connotation in it. Near
True.
enough.
But what happened with Fox? So Fox always raise their ears when sponsors pull out of the show. So take Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham or whatever. You suddenly notice that they're suspended from the air for 2 weeks because why? Some of the headline sponsors have pulled their sponsorship from the show, and ultimately the money speaks. I've never seen that situation in football yet, but I'd be interested to see what would happen. So who are you sponsored by on your shirt? HP at the moment, is it?
Spurs,
Yeah.
AIA.
AIA, right? The insurance guys. So I'd be fascinated as to what Spurs would do if there was racist chanting in the stands and then AIA said, you know what, fuck this, we're not sponsoring anymore because we don't want to be associated with you because you're not dealing with the racism in there. Amstel, there's so much racism in Champions League and Italian football. We're not sponsoring this shit anymore because there's too much connotation to we're supporting racism. I don't know. There's not so much of a direct link here. And I think football is still brushing it off as the minority and it's not that important, that we've still got this war between the commercial side of the game and that when money gets affected, people would take shit a lot more seriously and not fucking a 20 grand fine and a 30 grand fine and a 50 grand fine.
I think one of the reasons for that is because nobody really knows, and goes back to what I said right at the start of the pod, is like nobody can come up with the solution with what's right and what's not. And I agree with that. It probably needs a big sponsor of, I don't know, take the Inter Milan case, figure what they Nike maybe, I don't know. But for them to say, do you know what, if that's how your supporters feel, then we're not going to sponsor you anymore.
Someone else will fill the shoes.
But for the sponsor, how much money are they then losing out because those supporters will never buy their gear again?
I think
there's your cycle.
The commercial has to have an impact within it. Somehow, some way, shape or form, because money talks and shit walks, as they say. So I think that I don't know what the direct link is going to be, but we don't associate the brands with the clubs necessarily. Whereas somebody that took an advertising slot on Tucker Carlson's TV show is by definition supporting the viewers of Tucker Carlson's TV show. What we're not saying here is Nike, you're supporting Inter Milan, therefore you're supporting racism in football because they have a serious set of ultras. I think we're not drawing that direct line necessarily.
Well, probably because sponsorships have changed so much. They change more commonly. If I said to you Holston, you think of Tottenham. Yeah. You think of, if I say JVC, you think of Arsenal. You think of Dagenham Motors. You think of West Ham, right? So the clubs don't necessarily have that. Doesn't have that feel anymore, right? If I'd have said to you 20 years ago that Nike seemed so in with Arsenal that Nike would now be doing Spurs, like you wouldn't have believed that 20 years ago.
No.
But that's the revolving door. Nike might be doing Arsenal in 10 years now. So that brand loyalty is kind of gone from that perspective as well.
So then where is the commercial way to hit people in the pocket? I mean, do the fines need to get bigger?
I think the only solution is to take football away from these people.
From the fans.
It's the only way. So the problem is, and one of the reasons it won't happen is, it's easy, like what I said about Bulgaria in terms of, right, don't let them into the next World Cup qualifying, and I would take their clubs out of European football for the same. It would be easy even for UEFA to go, okay, right, CSK, Sofia, Ludogorets, Levski, Sofia, right, you can't come into Europe. Even UEFA could deal with that. It's probably not a big deal. It's a bigger deal when they'd have to go to Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus. You ain't playing in the Champions League.
For sure.
Because that's a marketing problem for them, isn't it?
But I do think then I'd like to see it in a standardised format. So strike 1, 50,000 fine, 1 game behind closed doors. Strike 2, 500,000 fine, 5 games behind closed doors. Strike 3, and strike 4 is when you get to DEFCON whatever. Because I suppose what's coming. You do that, you know what's coming.
The problem with that is, though, even if you take an example of Italy and Bulgaria, right, you can't really, I say you can't, but there's an argument in why shouldn't you? You can't really you couldn't fine Ludogorets the same amount of money that you fine Inter Milan.
No, but within a federation, you
even though the crime might be exactly the same.
Make it a percentage of revenue or whatever you want it to be.
But that's what I'm saying. So I mean, £50,000 is nothing to Juventus. I don't know if that's something to Ludogorets or not.
Yeah, sure. I think the thing is right now, people don't think they're going to get that big a punishment. I don't think people are scared of the punishment.
No.
So the punishment needs to be more severe, but also known in advance. I mean, you murder someone, it's 20 years.
The one concern with it is, like I said, in terms of one dickhead around me can ruin it. And I think it would be very easy for 100 people who want to cause chaos to get into a game like Bulgaria and England, who are not necessarily even Bulgarian or English. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. If I knew that if I was an idiot and I knew that if I go to Spurs and be racist, they're going to get kicked out of all competitions, you're going to find idiots that are going to want to do that. They'll stick on a Spurs shirt and be a knob for no reason. They don't care about their own personal consequences.
That's easy to manage at top level our sport in the Premier. That wouldn't happen in the Premier League.
No,
because you ain't going to get that many tickets together. You wouldn't be able to get hold of them. But in some of these grounds like that, even a Bulgaria-England game, it was nowhere near full.
No.
So I don't know, like certain countries with close borders or something. I don't know, like Poland, Ukraine, if they jump over or something like that. There's plenty of them around there don't like each other, aren't there? Mm-hmm. Who, I don't know, could it go that far that they do that, try and implicate them in that way? Then how do you prove that they're not?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think are
we going to get to the stage we have to show our passports to go into a football match?
ID maybe with tickets.
Is that a solution?
Wouldn't surprise me. It is, I don't know, right now.
That probably brings another conversation. Should we have it to get on Twitter?
What, ID?
Yeah.
So people can't troll. It's interesting that Twitter have banned political ads as part of their trying to clean up the level of conversation within Twitter and what people can and can't advertise. I'm not sure.
But all the racist hate generally is on Twitter, isn't it?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
From idiots.
We've spoken about it from
media.
A football fan perspective, but in terms of all the stuff that the players receive,
yeah,
it's all on Twitter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if the other accounts like Instagram and Facebook probably don't get it as much, but on Twitter it's a huge problem, isn't it?
You get it on Instagram, but less so on Facebook, I would say. Because Facebook, you are yourself. There's no like pseudo profiles. I mean, plenty of people will have fake profiles.
Let's be honest, some of our listeners will be FPL dog or FPL cat.
Yeah.
You know, who are you?
Yeah.
It's easy to hide behind and do that and then delete your
account. It's easier on Twitter, 100% easier to do it on Twitter.
I'm not saying you can't be FPL dog or FPL cat.
But just have some ID or verification or whatever.
I mean, even if that's private and only Twitter knows, for example.
Yeah.
Is that a way forward?
Would you be more scared being racist at a football stadium or online if you knew they knew who you were? I think so.
You asked me a question I can't answer.
I think so. I think people but again, we're talking about reducing the minority, and mob mentality does still come into it. I'm hesitant when I hear, I suppose, bringing it full circle back to what we're starting about, what's the solution? When people say things like stadium bans, or a couple of games behind closed doors and fine. To date, all of the bans and fines combined, like the one that Bulgaria got, have been too small for the fans that are causing the problems to give a shit. I think the consequences don't match the actions, and the consequences aren't enough to cause behavioural change. Education, I disagree with a little bit, because I think people know that they are being racist and they know that it's wrong. Like the Inter Milan fans that are saying, don't worry, it's not racist, we're just trying to put you off. You're like, yeah. Look at the videos of Balotelli or whoever else is getting abused and the distress it causes them. They know what they're doing. So just telling them that actually don't be racist because it's upsetting someone and it's not right.
Do you think
won't
that's
change them.
Highlighting the problem worse in a roundabouts way? That they can see somebody, because you know what I said.
They've got the result they wanted, haven't they?
Where there's certain black players who now feel like they can stand up to it, but because they are now showing reaction, do you think that in certain places is making the problem worse? By
saying, "Oh, we can rile this guy up."
I'm not saying that anybody should sit there and take it, but what? Yeah. Because you know there is potentially a reaction and a consequence to it. Was always a silent noise, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now you take like Tyson at the weekend, etc. Even if you take the Raheem Sterling incident at Chelsea, nothing happened till after the game, did it?
No.
So I don't know.
It is difficult. It is difficult to look at. One of the things we haven't talked about, and I feel less qualified to look at, is there institutional racism within the sport in terms of black players not getting selected or getting chances or that kind of thing?
I've thought about this quite a bit. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about to myself is people talk about like if we took at it from the manager level first. So there's obviously a really low proportion of black Asian managers, etc. Yeah. So a lot of people say they should use the Rooney rule, which is this thing in American football,
yeah,
isn't it? Where you
percentage
have to, what's the rule? And you have to.
I'm not 100% sure, but there's a certain percentage of.
You have to interview someone who's of an ethnic minority or something, I think. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, say Solskjaer goes tomorrow, and Manchester United have to interview let's say a black person, for the job. Who do they interview?
Sol Campbell.
How did I know you were going to say that?
I don't know.
No, seriously. Would they...
Chris Hughton.
Chris Hughton, yeah, that's the name I thought of. But Manchester United are never going to employ him.
Paul Ince.
So isn't that a little bit like it's token, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no point in that. Paul Ince flopped as a football manager.
He did.
Forget the colour of his skin is relevant. He's a crap football manager. He's also a bad pundit, by the way. His colour of skin there is irrelevant. So
Rio Ferdinand?
Yeah, maybe Rio. Yeah. Be brave though, wouldn't it? I know what you're saying. Yeah, potentially a former black player. I don't know.
If he's got his quote,
Patrice Evra?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. But are they really going to appoint these guys?
I mean, they'd get even less free reign than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, despite probably being club legends in a similar way.
There's little chance of it, though, isn't there? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I would Tottenham interview, so it wouldn't be fucking him.
No, I know that.
The guy you mentioned.
Ledley?
Yeah, but
has he got his licenses? I'm not sure.
Ledley's. I think Ledley's quite happy doing his coaching and stuff. I'm not sure if he wants to do management. I remember listening to an interview with Les Ferdinand a few years ago when he was kind of doing the background stuff. I think he still is a little bit at Queen's Park Rangers, and he was saying didn't really want it. I think a lot of former black players probably feel they need to work harder for it, opportunity-wise. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
But there probably is something in. I think for at grassroots level, I don't think there's any problem with black kids breaking through into football. Certainly not in this country. I think we could look at, say, considering the population of Asians in this country, why are there so few Asian footballers?
Yeah,
is a question that does need to be asked. I don't know why that is. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Because we're all encouraged to be doctors, mate, and accountants. Honestly, it's just not part of culture to be thinking about football. But there's a lot of talented Asian young players. A lot.
It's got to be.
Yeah, I think they are getting more and more and more. But I don't know why they don't break through. Maybe physically not.
Well, we've seen them break through in, say, like the England cricket team, for example.
Yeah, we have. We've got to the point of captaincy. Like, look at Nasser Hussain. Yeah. He captained the country at that point. Maybe they aren't good enough. I feel like football has got to the point now where players are assets. So a club will not look at a player based on the colour of their skin. They'll just look at them financially. Like, if I invest 100 grand in you in the next 4 years training and developing you, can I sell you for 200 grand? Doesn't matter whether you're short, tall, thin, fat, black, white, Indian, whatever. I feel like they are commodities. Players are commodities now, aren't treated as well. And if an Indian player has less resale value, that comes into the equation.
Why would he have less resale value?
Because people don't buy it. People don't have the assumption that they're not as good or there's not as many out there.
I don't know, right? Wouldn't I mean, like globally, if an Indian footballer broke through and did really well at a Premier League club, wouldn't that be a huge thing at the moment?
Yeah, massively.
That would be a commodity, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. I went to, and this is a conversation maybe we need to pick up in another time, but I just Googled it now. So my wife went to university with a nice young lady called Siobhan, who married Gavin Rose. Gavin is a manager at Dulwich Hamlet, black football manager. He's managed there now. I did remember reading this when I was talking at the time. 550 games for the club since 2009.
And he's black, is he?
He's black. Yeah.
Best you know what else that football club
best
is
mates
as well?
With Rio Ferdinand. Rio was
got an openly large gay following as well, that football
Dulwich
club.
Hamlet. Interesting. But just to think that longest serving manager, 550 games. It's non-league, right? But it's still a long time. I'd be interested on his thoughts on
I think on the managerial side, like to go back to that, I think if someone's good enough, they'll get the chance. Like, say, maybe a better example from what I said earlier is if the Arsenal job came up, you would like to think probably Henry will be in the conversation, maybe.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't be because of his ability, not because of his.
Well, I think in that case it would be. I don't think Henry would get an interview for the Man United job. Because he didn't do very well at Monaco. But because of his links with Arsenal, I could see that. But I think it's out them to prove themselves. Fair play to him, who I won't mention, right? But he's gone to Macclesfield. He's now at Southend. If he proves to be good enough, he'll prove to be good enough, won't he?
Yeah. The results, though,
and in which case, then he'll get the chance because he's got the club career and the international career that falls back on it. So, like, we'll see. I'm really uncomfortable talking about him. That's nothing to do with race.
Yeah. I mean, there are other things that come into the equation. You look at the sectarian stuff, north of the border and what have you. All fits into the same bracket, right?
Of course it does. That's a whole other podcast. I mean, talk about tribalism. I mean, that's like religion.
Yeah, yeah.
You're either Catholic or you're Protestant up there, basically. It's basically how it works.
Yeah.
And the songs they sing to each other, I mean, I don't know if that's calming down or not. I don't know if the fact that they're both trying to outdo each other, aren't they? Because I think they're letting under 1,000 away fans in for the Old Firm derbies now, which is ludicrous.
Under 1,000 per, that's nothing.
Yeah.
To avoid any kind of incidents.
I think one of them tried to one up the other, and then the other one tried to one up the other one back, and now they've both stitched up their own supporters, basically. Because one of the great things of the Old Firm is, bar the sectarian singing and all that, is that atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you still enjoy that game, it's not what it was 20 years ago from a quality perspective.
No. One of the worries I had about doing this show, when I've spent time thinking about it, is that there is no interesting solution to the problem. That there isn't a solution that, or I've seen that, I've heard that I think you're right, because that solves the problem. Because the outcome that the fans that are doing it want to get doesn't relate necessarily always to football. I don't think they're always football fans, which is why I don't think that education side of things.
But football has a responsibility.
100% has a responsibility, right? I think it's just such a big part of our culture and our society, and I actually really think it's it has so much good to give. You look at the grassroots stuff it does. But in this conversation that we've had, the thing that interests me the most is the standardization of punishment and empowering the fans to self-police each other more somehow. That's where I think we can see some gains. And the club's being a little bit firm. But not, the bog standard statements that they troll out. We believe in equality for all and no discrimination, whatever. Like the owner, like David Gold and David Sullen just standing up and saying, look, if you're a racist, fuck off, don't support our club, please. But just as blunt as that, they suffer anti-Semitism, right? We haven't even touched on the Y word at Tottenham yet, which I think we should, but they suffer from anti-Semitism, my two owners. It's got no relevance whatsoever, right? It's just bonkers. If you want to have a go at them for buying bad players, well, they don't choose the players. They put their hand in their pocket to spend plenty of good money in the last couple of seasons. So what else can you be mad at them for at this point? But they get a lot of abuse. But I think the club owners should stand up and be much more aggressive. Like if you're that way inclined, just piss off.
So the Y word came about, to my understanding, 60s, 70s, maybe even a little bit earlier, because Spurs, through not far away from where we are now, had a large, very large Jewish following from sort of Stamford Hill areas, and even Tottenham itself, which is not very Jewish now, but Stamford Hill, for example, still very much
Jewish. Yeah.
And Stamford Hill really is almost as close to Arsenal as it is to Tottenham. Yeah. It's not that far off. And now you might argue there's as many Jewish Arsenal fans as there is Jewish Tottenham fans. Mm-hmm. I'd say probably the percentage of Jewish supporters that go to Spurs, maybe 5%. Like, it's small. But it was, at one point, it was a very large number. And they used to get a lot of hateful abuses, again, going back 50 years, where, these things were, let's not say tolerated, but it was targeted abuse, if you will. So Spurs fans claimed the word, and the way they responded back to the targetism was like, okay, we're the Yid Army. And it became a defence thing.
But non-Jewish Spurs fans took that on as well.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And it's stuck. I don't know, what do you call yourselves at West Ham? What army are you?
Claret and Blue.
Claret and Blue.
Pellegrini's Claret and Blue Army.
Terrific.
Yeah. East London.
Not for much longer, maybe. One of the things I've said when I've very occasionally spoken about this, because I think we might have covered it once before, was I'd spoken about, there was a real rise I noticed in the last couple of years at White Hart Lane, particularly from West Ham fans and Chelsea fans, in terms of a rise again And maybe it's just because I was more self-aware and hearing these things more.
In the last couple of years?
Last year's at White Hart Lane.
Oh, okay.
Last year's at White Hart Lane. So, sort of around between sort of like 13 and 16.
You were also getting quite good on the pitch then.
Maybe. Might have been having an impact on that as well in terms of, they're getting
you off
a little bit. I don't know if that goes back to the Italy subject a little bit. And it became, certainly for me, it became more noticeable for it. And all it does then is like Spurs fans will defend themselves more. Mm-hmm. The problem we've now got, I think, for Spurs fans is what I always argued was when opposition fans stop targeting us with it, that's when Spurs need to stop using it. Mm-hmm. I think we get into a position now where Spurs fans are not being targeted for it. And I say this with a little bit of reluctance, actually, because when I was a kid, I never, when you're 6, 7, you start going to football and you hear everyone chant Yid Army, you don't think of the connotations or anything. You don't understand it. You just join in, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't probably till 20 years of chanting it that I knew that it was even offensive to anybody. Probably not even until I was in my mid-20s where someone went, look, do you think that's on? Like, and then even at that point you go, well, this is our badge of honor. This is our defense. This is who we are. And now, mid-30s going on to 40, you start looking at it and going, is this right? Because I sit here and go, all these things that like these Italians are doing, etc. Yeah. It's 2019. Tottenham really should get to a stage now where it's eradicated. Because there's nothing wrong with Spurs Army.
No.
And it will take a major push. And the problem is, about 10 years ago, there was 4 Spurs fans who got arrested for using the word because there was a warning, don't use it. 4 fans got arrested.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they eventually they got stadium bans for like a year. They got all their stuff back.
Yeah.
Because it was a big ongoing thing. The police deemed that it wasn't, the way Spurs fans were using it was not offensive. No Spurs fan uses that word and is attempting to be racist.
No.
But I do also believe that 95% of them don't know what the word means.
Yeah.
That's a big, so this again, it comes back to educationalizing people, I think. So the problem with that was 4 people got arrested out of 20,000 fans singing it, right? Because, when it goes off, it's 20,000 fans roughly are probably shouting it. So how have you picked out them 4 people from 20,000? It could have been me. Mm-hmm. So then it became really defensive and Spurs tried to get everyone to stop saying it. Then these guys got off and even the police went, no, they're not offensive, crack on. So then it was like open reign again just to carry on. So there was a point where it really could have stopped and it didn't. And I think if it came round again, this time it would stop. But it does also need as well, because when it comes from opposition fans, it's very targeted. And I don't think opposition fans know why either. They're not shout when they shout stuff. Even the West Ham fans, who was very audible gassing noises. I think when we played you when we beat you 4-1, it was really bad one year. Probably because of what was happening on the pitch. I think it's just brainless, right? What are you even targeting for? The people in this, how many Jewish people in this stadium? You've probably all been affected by these events that happened, all right, 78 years ago, but some of your family members might still remember. It's just a nonsense. And it's the best thing that could happen now. The problem is it will cause hate from Spurs, is to sit down and say, we're going to try and cut this out. But it needs opposition fans to cut it out as well.
Yeah, I mean, it works both ways, right? It's opposition fans that are generally the ones that are causing.
If I can try and remove myself from the Tottenham fan in me, I would look at it as another club and go, right, well, it's why are you allowed to do that? It's the same thing. I can't sit here and go, why are Inter Milan fans? I can't say, oh yeah, well, Spurs fans claim this word as a badge of honor. It's 60 years ago. It's time. It's nearly the 3rd decade of the 21st century. I think we all need to move. That'll be a very slow process. I think we will get there eventually with Spurs. But at the same time, there's a little bit of me feels sadness in that, because I've charted it for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've never meant to offend anyone by doing it.
No.
Maybe I have. I don't know.
Who knows? Interesting topic of conversation, James. We're gonna wrap it there because we can keep talking about stuff without ever coming to a solution or a conclusion. But to be honest, mate, if we were able to come up with a solution, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about FPL on a week-in basis. But I think as I always say to people, because people ask me a lot of the time, what's your plan with Planet FPL and what is your plan with FPL? What are you going to do next? And I'm like, look, the bigger picture is
going to take over fucking UEFA.
Exactly. The bigger picture is football, not FPL necessarily. And if we don't talk about these situations, how are we ever going to get anywhere? So
are you saying this out loud on a live podcast?
What?
What you just said.
If we don't talk about these situations, how are we ever going to get anywhere?
Nah, look, we're putting out 6 podcasts a week. I think if we want to bring up a topic that people want to look, we'll always approach it as what we are, fans. I think that's why the Berry podcast come out well, because we could relate. We can't relate to that grassroots level of football, but we can relate to the meaning and the emotion of what it is to be a football fan.
Indeed.
And I think we can, we're of different origins, etc. If we can't talk about this openly, then we've got an even bigger problem. Exactly.
The fact that a Tottenham and West Ham fan together can run a football podcast says it all.
Who knew? There's no gas noises or anything. You're well behaved all the time. You must be eating you alive.
Yeah. And you haven't used the Y word ever yet on the show.
I think I did today.
Oh, yeah, probably. Guys, we really appreciate the views, listens, all the rest of it. And this is a topic where we'd love some comments, feedback, shares, just anything that you think you want to get involved in the conversation. So it is a big topic in much the same way that you raised the VAR topic with your tweet last week and ended up getting 700, 800 retweets and people jumping in the conversation. Wouldn't it be nice if something like this could get that same level of attention? And
it'll never happen.
No, unfortunately not, because no one likes bad news in this way. But do like and share and comment on all of the channels, YouTube, iTunes, etc. You can find James on Twitter at PlanetFPL Pod. You can find me at Suj James. And anything else to add?
Yeah, I just want to point out, just in case something goes off in the England game, because we are recording this on Thursday,
tonight, isn't it? Yeah.
And this pod will go out on Friday, just in case. If something goes off in the England game tonight, we have to fucking re-record this.
Yeah, it's pre-recorded before England play Macedonia and Kosovo in the next few days.
Let's see over the next 6 nights, something's bound to happen. Mm-hmm. Let's see if anything gets acted on.
Yeah, interesting. So it's Friday today that people are listening, or we're publishing this. What's happening next week?
Well, it might actually be an extra bonus pod today, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk Planet FPL.
Happened so fast that
you didn't even know.
From him, Mr. Andy reaching out to now has been like 48 hours, and we haven't even had time to. I haven't even thought about it. We're going on Planet. Let's talk FPL.
We're definitely going on Planet FPL.
Let's talk Planet FPL. So we're going on with Andy. So look out on Andy's channel. He's on YouTube. Let's talk
I presume
FPL.
He's just putting it out on YouTube.
He is just putting it out on YouTube as a video. So do head over to Let's Talk FPL with Andy, because we're going to have a good laugh with that. We did the show in the 30th.
We had him on in the summer because we love him. He's brilliant.
Yeah, he wants to record that at like 11 o'clock or something. Are we going to be able to drink a beer at that time with him?
Listen, I'm still really ill. I'm not drinking anything. All right,
fine. I might have to carry the can on that one. So we are going to be on that. What's happening next week? Because we're back to FPL. And there is football again next week.
Next week, People's Poll Monday. I think I already know what's winning the vote, but you don't. Tuesday, Tottenham preview of the Planet FPL derby next Saturday. Tuesday night.
Don't even want to think about it.
Tuesday night, live stream on YouTube, the final night of Euro 2020 qualifying. We'll be taking on a lot of your cues on there, because there will be no feature podcast next week. Wednesday, Sky FF with 2017 winner Dan Cox. Thursday, Clash of the Correspondents, Watford and Burnley with 6th goal, Turfy topper. Friday, Final Plan game week preview for game week 13.
The way you've rattled through that quite quickly
makes people believe. No, we're not Tom and Nick. We don't read off a script.
I'm actually thinking there's some interesting stuff in there next week. At 6th goal in Clash of the Correspondents, for people that don't know, he's in California. So he records, when we record the show, it's like 3 a.m. in the morning or something. And he gets his mic out in his car when he's at work. Dan Cox, the 2017 winner of Sky. What did he win? 10 grand. Do you reckon he's got any money left?
I don't know how much he won.
We'll
But I'll
ask
tell you
him.
what, he's trying to win it again.
What's his rank right now? Do you know? Is he up there?
Yeah.
He's up there. So that's going to be some real interesting content as well.
He's so super competitive.
Yeah.
I think he wants to be the best guest ever on Planet FPL. He won't be because he's way too confident in himself. But it
Well,
will be
let's see.
it will be a great catch up.
Yeah. And the live stream on Tuesday is going to be good as well. I wonder if, Manchard, are you going to join us on the live stream again as you did last time? Because Manchard isn't.
We don't actually know what game we're going to watch yet. It does depend on the results of the next couple of days.
Manchard doesn't care about what game's on. He just cares that there's chicken wings.
I do.
As always. So there is plenty of content coming at you next week. Do make sure you're notified, subscribed, liked, all the rest of that stuff to get all of the content straight away. Other than that, it leaves me just to say ciao for now.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Cue music, Manchild.
Messi, ancora 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 Messi,
The Fantasy Football Show.